very warm welcome to the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show. And today's show is the world's toughest row, Atlantic Ocean in 51 days, which captures the incredible life journey of a gentleman whose spirit is one of resilience and extreme endurance. He is a former CEO, resilient expert, and extreme endurance rower. His successful business career as a highly respected international keynote speaker and formal global head, along with a background of overcoming adversity, which gives him a rare combination of the ability to discuss mental resilience, leadership, and regularly speaks on resilience training, bold goal setting, transition, teamwork, and most poignantly, suicide. Yes, folks, it gives me an immense pleasure to welcome on the show Tim Harris. Welcome to the show, Tim.
Russell, thank you. Lovely to see you again. Looking well.
Absolutely. Oh, yes. All is well. All is well indeed. You know, I've done some great research on you. I'm sure this show is going to be quite an electric discussion. Great engagement between the pair of us, I'm sure, Tim.
Yeah, we'll see what we
Tim,
can.
yeah, see what we can do. You are a living testament to the power of mental resilience. So tell us more about, being faced with depression, severe arthritis, and a shoulder reconstruction. I mean, dark days in your life that have been the driver to your success today.
Yeah, I mean, I'm great at the moment.
It's good to hear.
As good as I've ever been actually at the moment, and that is part of my journey. But yeah, going back several years, I don't really know where it stems from. I try not to look too far back because, are you really going to find the answers? And who knows what happened back in your childhood, and you can waste a lot of time and a lot of money, and we don't have much time on Earth, do we? So
That's true.
may as well just own it and crack on ahead. But I've spent some time certainly trying to look into why I've been prone to these lows. Alcohol was one of them.
Yes.
I got into booze relatively young, probably 15. And yeah, for whatever reason, I was a pretty strong character back then without booze, but as a lot of Brits feel, I think, who knows what it is? That there's a real drinking culture in the UK, right?
There is indeed.
I,
Yeah, it's a
I
British
think
thing.
less and less now, certainly with with my nieces and nephews and their friends. There's a lot less reliance on it seemingly.
Mm.
But it was very much a way of life with us, and I got on the wrong side of it. I became quite reliant on it. I didn't feel confident going out without it.
Oh,
Um, so and it has an impact, right?
it does.
You
Yes.
don't sleep well, and I mean, I feel like a bit of an arse. I say to some of my mates, do you know what? I've had insomnia probably for 20 years now. And then in the next sentence, I'd say, yeah, I've kind of been boozing for 20 years. Ah, oh yeah, bit of a correlation there, maybe.
Yeah, possibly so. Yeah.
Possibly so. But look, for whatever reason, I've been prone to these lows over the years,
Mm.
and weirdly, at 53 now, I feel like I'm getting a grip on them, which is, I mean, I don't know whether that makes me strange or makes me progressive or I don't know, but
Well, it means you're moving in the right direction, doesn't it, Tim? That's for
yeah,
sure. And that's a good thing. That
yeah.
really is a good thing.
But to go back to your original question, um, those lows were just getting too low
Mm.
and too frequent and too dangerous. Really, there's a bit of suicide ideation in there, and
Mm.
I was on another podcast a few months back, and I ended up saying to the host and that I'd only just worked out that it wasn't about wanting to be dead; it was just wanting the noise to stop.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think a lot of people can resonate with that. You know, you have dark days, and you just need a break. You know, you need a
Yeah.
clarity break. I think the millennials call it a safety break, do they, or a safe space, or whatever they
It's something
whatever.
like that, but you're absolutely right. Everybody needs a break sometimes. Yeah,
Yeah, it all just gets too much. You know, life's moving so bloody fast, and you
it
know,
is.
with AI and smartphones and you know, you've constantly got one. I sound like an old fart now, but you've constantly got a device on the go, and you know, sometimes two, and it sort of seems quite cool to be able to
Yeah,
multitask. Um, and then you realize you haven't really had a break for however long it is, and everyone needs that, and you forget to go outside, and you know, everybody needs fresh air and a bit of vitamin D, and to be in
exactly.
nature. And so I just got the wrong side of
Mm,
that. Not enough exercise, too much booze, eating badly. Um, but yeah,
absolutely.
it's part of the journey, right?
It's certainly part of the journey, and to sort of like look at the fact of what mobile devices do in our lives today. Technology, and the social media. Years ago, of course, I can remember anyway, standing on train stations, and everybody was standing on the platform in the same place, reading a newspaper. The train would come in, they'd get in and sit in the same seat every morning, reading the newspaper. So you move on to today, same antics, but no newspapers, mobile phones.
Yeah,
So everybody's on their phone doing exactly the same thing they used to do years ago with newspapers. It's just a classic human thing, isn't it?
yeah,
Crazy.
it is.
Um,
Um, and and actually, when I think of that image you've just conjured up,
mm,
when you look down the train carriages, you know, going back, ugh, sound old again, you know, 15 years, even 10,
yes.
not everybody would be on the paper. So there would be a sort of that view of the carriage would be
Yes.
broken up. Some people would be sitting up listening to a Walkman, some would be on the newspaper, some would be
Yeah.
reading a book, some would be doing nothing. And so there was variety down the carriage. And when you look
Correct.
now, we literally look like robots.
We do indeed.
60 people, every single one on their smartphone. And it's,
And then back in those days, of course, you had the broadsheet newspapers.
yeah,
So they'd be spread right open in front of
yeah,
everybody else's space. So arguments would start, and
yeah,
it was a funny train journey into, well, in my case, London most mornings.
yeah,
What was
yeah.
going on? Brilliant.
But I mean, you know, we moan. I guess this is the constant argument. We moan about this technology, but it is
Yeah,
amazing now. It's amazing that you can do everything from it.
you
But
can
you know, we're really having to be careful about you know the amount we use them.
indeed. And some control. We've got to control ourselves with that. It's difficult to do.
Yeah,
Um, Because if you can control yourself, you can't control others. So others will still try to get hold of you in
yeah,
one way, shape, or form. So it draws you back in anyway. So it's
yeah.
a strange culture, but
Yeah,
there
and
we
I
are.
you know certainly for my kids
Mm,
um and well, I guess some adults suffer from it as well. You know, a bit of FOMO.
definitely.
But I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not I'm not one of those. I really, you know, I don't
Mm,
I'm not a one that's into
mm,
FOMO. But
that's
yeah,
good.
you can get sucked into it. You know, you start looking on some of these social media sites, and you find yourself an hour and a half later,
Yep.
and you've learned nothing.
You've learnt nothing, and there's an hour and a half in this particular context you won't get back in your life.
Yeah,
So it's
exactly.
all about,
Yeah,
managing your time. Everyone talks about work and life, splitting of time. But it's, yeah, people who are on their mobile phones at work, they're on their mobile phones in their social space. It's taken over the world, isn't it? It's crazy,
yeah,
but it's what it is at the end of the day.
yeah.
But as a renowned burnout coach, you harness your extensive experience of overcoming these personal challenges to guide individuals and organizations through stress management and resilience building, Tim. So tell us more about how tell us more about how your personal challenges helped you to become a highly successful burnout coach, which you are.
Thank you. Well, so when I was in the city, uh, all the managers there, so
Mm,
no one is really ever looking after the person at the top. So they're looking after people beneath them, and even people beneath them have their own coaches. Um,
yes.
but who's looking after the guy at the top? And I used to speak to, fellow managers at the companies I was at, and it was a lonely place.
Oh, big
Um,
time.
the desks we were running were, full of big, I'll be polite and say big characters,
Mm.
because I know that your software will extrapolate any of the expletives I come out with if I describe them properly. Um,
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
but yeah, it was lonely at the top.
It
Um,
is
it's
very.
a well coined phrase. And when I left the city, I thought, what will I do next? And
Mm.
I've always been quite a deep thinker, and I just thought, you know what, I'm gonna get a coaching qualification, and I'm gonna go back into the city and try and help leaders like myself who were struggling
Mm.
to either exit the city as I had, or at least navigate it with some kind of grace and dignity and sustainability.
Mm.
That's the real key. It's the sustainability.
Agree with you.
Burnout to me is just it's the mindless pursuit of I guess of excellence in the face of insurmountable
Yep.
pressure.
Absolutely.
You think your body can take it, but as you get older, they can't.
They can't indeed. Indeed. So it's a great service you're offering to at this level, isn't it? It's fantastic. Everybody forgets the pressures that leaders are on. Be it chairmen, CEOs, CFOs, huge pressure when managing, looking after small, medium enterprises as well as more so corporates. It's a big thing, and you can't
It,
overlook it.
it is, and these days, they're expected to know so much. They have to
Mm,
deal with governance and strategy, and they're supposed to be, empathetic and emotionally intelligent, and
mm,
yet, yet fierce in business,
mm.
fiercely competitive, and yet be servant leaders, almost psychologists.
Yes.
I think we ask too much of leaders now, which is why, especially in the States, virtually every CEO or every board member has a coach. And I think that's more and more the case in the UK now. There's less of a
Yeah.
stigma to business people and individuals having support, whereas there used to be such a stigma to saying, I have
Mm.
a coach.
Yeah, you probably would have been laughed at years ago, wouldn't you? What do you need a coach for? What's going on in your life? You'd have been, yeah, people
Yeah,
wouldn't have taken
yeah.
it seriously.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah, and think you've got some mental illness or something, which, technically speaking, they do have.
Yeah,
Let's be honest, that's
yeah.
what it is. And it has come across from America, hasn't it? It's an American thing that's ring fenced itself here now, which is a wonderful thing. And I'm pleased that the likes of yourself, Tim, operate and provide these services at that level. It's an incredible profession to have, a great journey, and I congratulate you for that because it's wonderful.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, Americans, they used to say one of my therapists, and
Yes, that's right.
they're,
Yes,
they're very open about that. One of my
they
therapists,
are.
and the English are kind of, what are you talking about? Uh,
Yeah, exactly.
but I
Mm.
think the Brits are getting better at it, but there are still people that poo-poo it. But you know,
It's a part of life. You've got to embrace it, I'm afraid, because it's good for everybody, isn't it?
yeah,
It's obviously good for you professionally, but it's good for those at the top that you engage with because it's helping their lives out and making it structurally better for them, mentally and physically. So I congratulate you for that.
thanks.
You completed the world's toughest row. Now, this is a great story, isn't it? A 3,000-mile unassisted crossing of the Atlantic. When you set this exceptional goal, more people had been into space, and more than 10 times that number had climbed Everest, then completed this challenge. I mean, what a feat, Tim. What were your initial thoughts around completing the toughest row and why? That's some, that's some row, isn't it? As an
Yeah.
individual on your own.
Well, I wasn't on my own. I was a pair. So
Ah, okay,
I went with a great friend of mine called Simon Calver. Um,
okay.
and I was very lucky that he agreed to come because several of my other friends had said, you've got to be joking. And luckily, Simon was in the right place. I mean, as we were talking earlier, right place, right time.
Mm, yeah, exactly.
But I had it's not as random as it seems. I had been following that row for 15 to 20 years
Okay.
because we were lucky enough to holiday in Antigua when we were younger, and that's where the race has always ended. Uh,
Mm,
and over the years, it had just been, I guess, niggling away at me. And as I was approaching 50 and really not in a good mental place
mm,
of work, it's probably the only epiphany of my life was Christmas 2019, so just before COVID. And it just came to me, I need to do that row. Otherwise,
wonderful.
otherwise I'll still be sat at this desk or 6 feet under,
Yeah.
when I'm 60. And so that was the thought process.
Mm,
My
I can
wife,
understand that.
my wife, luckily enough, was supportive enough and I use this word very
Yeah.
carefully to allow me to do it because
Mm,
it was asking a lot of her to
definitely.
look after our two children, um, while I was away, knowing that they would be both worried, and she would.
Mm,
I,
exactly.
I say this again carefully. I was about to say she would have twice the work to do, but really that implies that I do 50% of the work with the kids, which is not true either. So
That was a very honest opinion. And of
yeah,
course, you were away for pretty much 2 months, weren't you, doing this? So 51 days and whatever before and after. It's got to be a good 2 month stretch.
well, it was
Um,
nearly three actually. It was really sad because
interesting.
the crews go out to La Gomera in the Canaries for over 2 weeks before the race starts because you have to do a lot of prep, uh,
Yes.
and quite a few media events out there, and you're making sure that everything's working well, and you're going through your systems and speaking to the safety teams, just getting everything ready.
Mm,
And I had a really early flight out to Spain.
mm.
Didn't want to wake the kids up, knowing that they were coming out to watch the start of the race 2 weeks later. And so the night before, I just kissed them goodnight as I would
Yes.
ordinarily, and just said, see you on Friday week. And then they got locked down,
Oh,
and so I never.
COVID once again, the strike
Yeah,
of COVID.
I know, and so it was really hard because I never actually got to say goodbye to them properly.
Mm,
So
that's
it
tough.
was nearer 3 months that I didn't. Well, not three, but 2.5 months. And my son was
Yeah.
over. They were only 5 and 7 at the time.
Oh, it's young. Yeah. Yeah.
But we did have a good time in Spain. Um,
Good.
I think most of the crews just drank their way through the first week, point where the
Good stuff.
the safety officer called us into the meeting room halfway through and said, "Okay, I think you've had enough fun now. Actually, some quite serious rowing to be done in a week's time, so I don't want to see anybody in that bar for the next
Mm,
week." So we knuckled down, and
that's good.
yeah, what a race! I mean,
What a race indeed. I mean, just so put things into context, I mean, what are the start and finishing ports for the toughest Atlantic row? You've just said Antigua's the finishing point. I mean, this will give people an understanding of the challenge you faced and set yourself up for, because the start and the end of going across the Atlantic, wow, that's a rough bit of ocean.
Yeah, and part of the draw of this race was that you just did not know the weather you were going to get,
Mm,
and you didn't know how you were going to deal with the row, unassisted, physically or mentally. And
mm,
and I'm really careful about saying this. I take nothing away from people doing marathons. I'll take the marathon as an example, but
mm,
you know, you can obviously get rain and wind on the marathon, but you know the course,
yeah.
and you know you're not going to get swept into the Thames by random weather on a marathon day. But yeah, we just didn't know what we were going to get.
And the thing is, with marathon, really good comparison, you know that it's going to be over in an hour and a half, 2.5 hours, and probably consistent weather to some degree. But 51 days on the Atlantic, you don't know what the weather's going to be from one day to the next. It can change. So changeable.
Yeah, and it did. Uh, you know, there would be, I mean, there really were some
Mm,
incredible shifts. It's
I can imagine.
easy to remember the bad ones, but there were some wonderful shifts where
Mm,
you'd have the Milky Way above you, um, no light pollution, and
wonderful.
maybe some wind and some waves behind you, and you're just surfing these waves in the middle of the
Mm.
night, and you're looking up, and apart from Simon, sleeping below, the nearest person to me was in the International Space Station above,
Yes.
6 kilometers of water below, and it was surreal that we were just out there on our own.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And there were some lovely moments. Be listening to some music at that time with a
Mm,
following sea, and it was wonderful. And then there'll be nights where you couldn't remember your own name. You were stumbling around the boat as if you were drunk, but
mm.
none of the upside. And we genuinely forgot each other's names, and we were hallucinating at times. And it was extraordinary. And
Yes, I can imagine.
it would be pouring with rain, really properly hard, sort of monsoon-esque rain. And it would be 4, 5 in the morning, and you'd get that bang on the hatch saying, "It's your shift." And
Oh,
I remember
that's
occasionally,
tough.
yeah, I remember occasionally just looking at Simon, just going, "No, no, no, it
Leave
can't
me alone.
can't be my shift. I've literally just closed my eyes." And he would say, "No, you're up." And I would say, "I'll give you £1,000 to row my shift." And he was like, "No way, get out of here."
No, it's your turn, Tim. I'm
Yeah,
going to sleep now. Fantastic. I mean, you would have to be great friends to do that, wouldn't you? Because you could almost end up hating each other because the trial and tribulations of that, as you're just explaining, you've just been woken up and you don't want to go rowing, you want to go back to sleep. That could cause a lot of scenes.
yeah. So I mean, it's really sad. It doesn't happen very often, but
Mm.
occasionally you do see crews arriving in Nelson's Dockyard, Antigua, and they don't
Yes,
even shake hands. They walk in opposite
they
directions. It's
they've had
quite,
enough of each other.
but
Yeah, I can imagine that.
you're absolutely spot on. That I think when you fall out there, I guess it goes one of two ways. You realize that you need each other, and you work to come back together, or you
Yeah.
you repel each other. But we Simon and I barely had a crossed word, and when we did, we immediately discussed it and
Mm.
apologized and hugged and moved on. So and we're still great friends now, and there's that real bond you can imagine. When we see each
Yes.
other, just that kind of that knowing look at what we went through, and no one else can really. The other rowers know, but you know. even
Mm.
my wife and kids and closest friends that can't really grasp what it was
Well,
like.
even if you, as you just say, even if you try and tell the story to obviously friends, your wife, other people, it's a difficult one to tell, isn't it? Because they can't emotionally understand what you went through because they've never done it themselves. So it's hard to imagine, isn't it? It's quite a grueling, emotional experience. I can only imagine the trials and tribulations that you both went through to get across and make it to Antigua. That's some feat. It really is.
Yeah, it's a special thing, and I think about it every single day.
Mm.
And I do quite a few talks on it. I've got one coming up in a few weeks' time, uh,
Wonderful.
and one of the main takeaways, and I hope anyone listening listens to this, is that
Yes,
we always have more in the tank. Whenever you think you're done, you have further to go. You
I
know,
agree.
we're all running at 30% of our potential.
Yeah.
And without being too self-deprecating, if I can row the Atlantic, and I had never rowed before. I'm good at sport. I'm no elite athlete,
Mm.
but if I can do it, then you can do it. It's mind over matter.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree. I agree completely.
yeah.
I mean, the row took some 2 years of preparation, remember, and 51 grueling days to complete. Unbelievable. Over 300 back-to-back 2-hour shifts on the oars, on 3 hours sleep a day, a truly mind-bending feat. I mean, 3 hours sleep a day. I mean, that's just incredible for 51 days. This sounds inhuman. So please talk to us through the preparation and dedication, and how did you survive on such little sleep? I mean, it's just unimaginable, Tim.
Well, just on that point again, that's just the digging deep bit because we didn't have a choice. Oh, I suppose we did have a choice. We could have stopped, but if we wanted to finish, then we didn't have a choice. And I mean, humans have shown, right, over the millennia, we are just
Mm.
survivors.
Yeah, we
And
are.
um, we just had to keep digging deeper. And it's a bit of a first world problem. It was our choice. That there's a very poignant moment where we saw a migrant dinghy mid-Atlantic. So, I mean, not mid, but it was about 500 miles off the coast of Mauritania. And
Wow.
And the Coast Guard had told us not to approach any migrant dinghies. In fact, while we were in La Gomera preparing for the
Mm.
race, a migrant boat came in and it was a family of six, and one of them was dead.
Oof.
And they had to, they put them under armed guard in our boat park because they had to quarantine them,
Mm.
firstly because of COVID, and then they had to process them into Spain. So actually, I mean, it sounds horrendous, but they did lose one of their family, but the other five did get what they had set out to do, which was to get processed into mainland Europe.
Mm.
But because that boat was found, the safety team then spoke to the Coast Guard, who spoke to us and said, if you see any boats while in the Atlantic, don't
Yeah,
approach them because you can imagine how desperate they are.
exactly.
They would just
Extremely.
board your boat, and so we saw this boat, and we couldn't see anybody in it,
Mm.
and we it just didn't feel right
Mm.
that we weren't allowed to approach them, and Simon and I were saying to each other, there could be a young family lying down, dying
Mm.
there, a child, surely we should row over and you know and check and throw them some water or some food or something. Um,
Mm.
as it happened, with the currents and the wind, we were too far away from them to get to them because the boat we were in is not maneuverable. You can't row
Mm.
against the waves in the boat we were in. But for a couple of days, it left us, feeling very solemn and really humbled us, thinking that
Mm.
thinking about the choice those people made when they were on the coast of Africa, that life was so bad
Mm,
that they basically played roulette. Um,
definitely a game of roulette, that's for
roulette
sure.
probably, well,
Russian roulette.
Russian roulette is actually, your odds are better playing Russian roulette than they are getting in a
Mm,
dinghy given to you by a gang that's, it's full of holes and, not,
yes, exactly.
not fit for crossing a lake, let alone the Atlantic.
Yeah.
So yeah, it really made you think about how lucky we are. The ovarian lottery they call it. How lucky we were born
Yeah.
in the UK in a first world country, and there we go. Yeah, bit of
There we
perspective.
go, indeed. And a great story too. But you obviously took the right advice by not approaching, although you couldn't anyway, as you explained, because you were too far away. Because that probably would have been a dangerous thing to do, actually, Tim, wouldn't it? I mean, you translate these struggles to the challenges companies, teams, and individuals face in life, helping audiences deal with stress and combat it. You also throw in amusing stories of nakedness, interesting, hallucinations, which you've already mentioned, and being dethroned by a flying fish. Now, I want to understand that one too. You speak and coach on how to manage these stressful changes,
Yeah.
having transitioned from global head of a multi-million-dollar commodities business to becoming coach and transatlantic rower. I mean, that's some life transition, Tim, isn't it? Tell us about the fish. That's really something.
Well, we got hit by flying fish every day.
Ah, thought so.
Yeah, they're attracted to the navigation lights, and as I
Yeah.
found out, the light on my iPod screen as I was, trying to change tracks. Um, and actually, one of the first things we had to do in the mornings, we were only relying on solar power. So first thing in the morning, we would have to clean the solar panels to make sure got powered up, especially when it was cloudy. And then we had to clear the deck of flying fish that had
Oh,
landed in,
wow.
because if we didn't find them and then they cooked in the midday sun, the
Mm,
smell was just horrific, and it was really hard to get rid of.
yeah,
Um,
I can imagine.
but yeah, the fish were. Oh, it was entertaining, but the the being dethroned story was that
Mm.
all we had was a bucket as a loo. It was very basic. Bucket and chuck it, we used to say. Uh, and I was sat on said bucket one evening in a storm, actually, as it happened, and I tried to change tracks on my iPod, and the light obviously attracted a very large flying fish, which hit me so hard in the side of the head that it shocked
Wow.
me off balance, and I fell off. I fell off the loo,
Yeah.
um, and shorts around my ankles and my tether and lanyard tangled up, and flailing around on the deck in the contents of said bucket, and
Oh dear, I can imagine. What a story. But thankfully not overboard, because that would
not
have been a bit of a.
no, not overboard. But it took me quite a while to clear that up, and leave the boat in a fit state for Simon to start his shift, and how late.
Well, you could have just left it there and said, Simon, it's your shift now. I'm going to bed. That could have been funny, couldn't it? But
I think
could
that
have
would
made
have
a
caused
story.
an argument.
I think it would have done. Yeah, that would have been a falling out, major falling out scenario. Oh my
Yeah,
God,
why
just think about that.
tell us, why did you two fall out? Well,
Well, it happened like this. It started with a flying fish and so on
yeah,
and so forth. Brilliant story. Oh, that's a good one to make up, isn't it? It's one to tell at one of your shows. You could
yeah.
enhance that slightly, put a little joke, but of course, all this after having been long-term sufferer of poor mental health. In fact, you were told that neither mentally nor physically would you be able to finish the toughest Atlantic row. I mean, it's probably quite a true thing. But finish it you did, raising £160,000 for a teenage mental health charity in the process. Yes, folks, £160,000. So firstly, it's incredible that you proved the doubters wrong, and that's quite right too. And secondly, what a huge amount of money and awareness you generated for the mental health teenage charity. I mean, who are the charity, by the way? And they deserve to get a mention here, don't they?
Yeah, lovely little charity, and I say that deliberately because they
Mm,
pack a big punch, even though they are
yes.
well, at the time they were only 5 people. I think maybe they're even smaller now because the charities have had a tough couple of years.
Oh, they have,
But
yeah.
yeah, they're called STEM4, um,
Okay.
and they promote positive teenage mental health, and they have several apps. We referred to it earlier that kids and
Yeah.
adults are permanently on their phones, and so these apps
Yes.
allow them, to tap in when they're low and offer them support and guidance and tips and where to turn, who to call, what to do, what not to do.
Mm,
And it's actually Simon that found them. Um, we were always going to find a charity that was to do with mental health.
mm.
What then happened was that on the day I signed up for the row, one of my greatest friends, lovely, very, very mentally strong man, I have found out subsequently, called David Carter, lost his 15-year-old son.
Oh, dear, sad.
He was 14, in fact, Isaac.
Oh,
Um, Lovely boy,
dreadful.
call him the big
Mm,
year. And yeah, I got that call to say that had happened, and so we started looking for charities that dealt with suicide prevention. We then thought that we didn't actually want to spend 2 years talking about suicide,
mm,
but we did want to, and were very aware of the problems facing young kids. So
indeed.
Simon came across this charity called STEM4, and we love their strapline because it's really, it's uh, promoting positive teenage mental health is a
Yes,
lovely strapline. It's full of hope.
indeed. Yeah, it certainly is.
Yeah, we had some
And
amazing support, and yeah, that was a great motivator when we were low and feeling like we wanted to stop. We knew that having been given the support of all our very generous sponsors, that we had
mm,
that obligation, we had that responsibility to finish.
to finish and raise that seriously amount of money for such a lovely, wonderful, but small charity. That's a huge congratulations. That's fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
your globally renowned expertise on developing resilience, managing change, and motivating teams has been sought by companies and elite organisations internationally, from the Royal Marines, oh wow, the Royal Marines, and the Royal Navy to Thames Valley Police, Google, the Times, and city hedge funds, through to national health services, and of course mental health charities and schools, of course. This is just to name a few. A truly successful business, Tim, isn't it? Because you're really going across many sectors there.
Yeah, well, I think the takeaways can be applied to any sector. You know,
Yes,
gaining perspective, not taking yourself too seriously, discipline. There's always more in the tank. You know,
yes.
uh, teamwork. They can be applied to any business.
I can.
My first talk, I actually thought it was a bit of a joke. My
Mm,
first talk after the row was to the Royal Marines, and when I
wonderful.
when I was offered the gig, I said, so let me just double check here. You want me to talk to the Royal Marines about resilience in a boat? You kidding me?
Doesn't sound natural, does it? But it's
Um,
an interesting
and
one.
but yeah, that was a great talk down on HMS Warrior. Amazing ship. Sat with the very charming Vice Admiral Martin Connell.
Mm.
Yeah, really special, really special.
Absolutely, and of course, after you presented to the Royal Navy aboard the HMS Warrior, a lovely, lovely boat, a lovely ship, I should say, not boat. Vice Admiral Martin Connell, CBE, by the way, who you've just mentioned, commented, and I quote this, Tim, as well. Tim gave a masterclass in self awareness and resilience by telling his personal life story about his Atlantic row, what he learned about himself, and how he is now seeking a renewed purpose in his life. Sincere thoughtful and charming, with powerful and memorable messages applicable to all. I would very much recommend Tim as a speaker and leadership coach. Now, Tim, now that is a truly some accolade. I mean, Tim, how did you feel at the time when presenting to the Royal Navy, and to have that accolade from this wonderful man? That's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, well, like I say, he was charming and humble,
Mm.
and actually he was very funny. And he said to me, "Normally I have to make these talks, so I'm just very grateful that you're doing it." Um,
Brilliant.
but yeah, yeah, some very kind words.
Very.
Yeah, and a lovely
And of
man.
course, and those sort of kind words go down very well, don't they? Because you put them on your website. Obviously, you would do as a quote, and that's great for people who are coming in to have a look and see what can Tim do for us. To read that quote from the Royal Navy is something else, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a masterclass in itself.
Uh, so yeah, I mean, look, I do think it gives it a certain amount of credibility,
Mm,
because not everybody knows me, and not everyone knows the Vice Admiral, but they're very aware of the nature, the stature that he holds, the status,
mm.
and that if he is saying that, then it's not going to be made up. So yeah, I mean, that gave me certainly some credibility for sure.
Oh, huge credibility. Huge credibility. I mean, I've learned through researching your life for this show, actually, Tim, that you are incredibly passionate about sharing your insights and approach, having gone through many struggles yourself, both at work, at home, and while crossing the Atlantic. I mean, you give practical and simple tactics to massively stack the odds in your favor, eliciting changes in attitude and delivering action points that are immediately usable and relatable to your clients. I mean, you must be very proud of your achievements and, of course, the delivery you provide as a business. A lot of hard work, Tim, isn't it, really? I mean, it's a sensational act you do.
Well, that's very kind. Uh, I'm a work in progress for sure. I mean, we all are, I
Yeah.
guess.
Well, we
Um,
all are, yes.
yeah, but certainly from where I was, I'm I'm a better person.
Mm.
I'm a I'll say this just looking out of the window of my office.
Yeah.
I'm a better husband. I'm a better father. I'm pretty sure I'm a better friend and a better son. Yeah, I'm just in a better place. I'm much more aware. Um, I'm much more thoughtful of others. I often say, and I know people like to come up
Mm.
with narratives, but I often say that the first half of my life was selfish, and this this section of my life is
Mm.
less so. I won't say selfless, but certainly less selfish.
Incredible. I mean, you genuinely and authentically inspire people, and I've read about this too, to set bold goals, enhance and believe in their resilience, move outside their comfort zones, because no one likes to get out of their comfort zones, do they? Let's be honest, and push their potential, helping them to become more than they thought they were. Incredible. I mean, please tell us more about how and what you deliver, along with your popular talks. For example, burnout, suicide, and depression. Uh, Getting people to think out of the box, out of their comfort zones, is a difficult thing sometimes.
It is, and you made reference to it earlier, about um, comfort zones.
Mm,
So familiarity is our greatest need,
mm,
but what I've discovered over the years is that familiarity traps us in a smaller world.
yes,
So I'm not going to get all woo on you, but our
I
our
agree with you.
our brains are hardwired for comfort, but our
Mm,
souls are hardwired for growth.
mm,
So your brain is constantly trying to make you do the safe and comfortable thing, and your soul is trying to make you do something else,
mm,
something that makes you grow, something that takes you out of your comfort zone.
Exactly.
And one of the analogies I use is say you've managed to get yourself out for a 5K run, and you're thinking, this feels pretty good. Maybe I should just run 5 more and I'll make it 10 today.
Mm.
Your brain is saying, no, thank you. Let's just go home, sit on the sofa and watch Netflix. And your soul is saying, come on, push yourself, push
Yes, that's
yourself.
so true. That's so true.
And you choose the easy option because our brains are so damn strong. They're so damn convincing because we are hardwired for comfort. And that's when we get stuck in what I call the discomfort zone. So
Yes.
it's a transition, right? When you go through a transition, so say work to the row or work to
Mm.
coach or my original career to coaching, one has to end and one has to begin, but there's this huge transition in the middle. And that is where the magic happens, but it's also where the turbulence happens. So your brain and the Trekkies and the Star Wars fans will love this. If you remember the tractor beams in these sci-fi
Yes.
films, it's like the brain is a tractor beam trying to suck you back towards comfort when your
Mm.
soul is trying to pull you towards growth. And you have to keep fighting through that discomfort zone. And eventually you break through, and people do because because we have so much potential within us.
Yes.
But it's really troubling when you're in it. So if there's anyone out there listening, if anyone going through a transition like a promotion or divorce or moving house,
Mm.
um, these are huge transitions. Having children, massive
Mm.
transitions,
Oh, massive. Yes.
like rowing the Atlantic, and you cannot achieve being a parent or rowing the Atlantic or moving house in one go. It takes time. These things have to
Mm.
evolve. And so you just have to take it step by step. Otherwise, you
Yeah, it's too much, isn't it?
face overwhelm. Yeah. So on the row, the safety team over the history of the row, the day that they have received the most calls from teams saying, what have I done? Can you tow us back? Is day 3. And on talking to those teams, it was the people who had forgotten the process, the planning that they had put in
Mm.
to make sure that they didn't face overwhelm. They had got in the boats and they had started, and then suddenly, because of the enormity of the event, all they could think about was, I've got to do this for 2 months.
Mm.
And it was just too much for them to take. And so they phoned in, and ultimately most of them finished. But that's why, again, with parenting, with becoming a parent
Mm.
or moving house, as I said, or a promotion, you just have to take it step by step. Set yourself some goals within the main goal.
Exactly. Exactly. And it is a hard thing. I mean, I've often used the term myself, actually, with people. Let's try and get that person out of his comfort zone and see how he or she reacts. And that's not me being a nasty person. That's just me trying to find what those people can actually do and achieve in life at a business level.
Yeah,
And so it's not me trying to be nasty at all. It's actually seeing the richness within them, but it's also seeing they love that comfort zone they're in. When they're on stage talking about what they recognise as being their professional well-being, they're able to sit there, stand there, and talk and be comfortable. But give them a subject they don't know much about. Let's see how they react to that. And I think that's a strong thing, isn't it? Comfort zones are a powerful message to get across to people. And
yeah,
if you want to grow as an individual, yeah, that's important.
yeah,
Otherwise, you say you'll never grow.
yeah. I mean, like I say, you can be trapped in a smaller world if you're.
Exactly.
I mean, they say nothing great has ever come from comfort.
No, I would agree with that too. Push your levels, push yourself. You
Absolutely.
know, and I'm a great one for that.
Yeah.
I'm always dipping my toe in uncharted waters, but that's another story. I mean, let me provide another.
One, huh?
Sorry, Tim.
So your story's a pretty colourful one. So
Oh yeah, should you read my book? There's some stories in there that will sort of blow your mind. Really would, yeah. There's stuff in there. I won't go on about it now because there's your show, but a bit of James Bond, um, meeting up with what can only be described as a Eastern European mafia king, all sorts of things that you just think, wow, really? And it's all true stories as well. All of my travels around the world, quite fascinating. But let me provide another accolade to your services as a coach, Tim. And
Oh,
again, oh, yeah, absolutely, you've got many. And again, a quote from Greg Searle, MBE, who is an Olympic and World Championships gold medalist, coach, and speaker too, of course. And I quote, Tim's approach is enjoyable, highly effective, and rewarding. He helped me unearth important and useful action points. Tim challenged me to reflect on my style, particularly picking up on what was, unsaid. I value Tim's use of humour at times as well, not something one automatically expects in coaching. I always look forward to spending time with Tim. You are definitely a people's person, Tim, and able to see where to challenge individuals for their greater good and life improvement. And that's a great quote, isn't it?
yeah. I mean, again, another charming and impressive man.
Yes.
I was at university with Greg, and I remember him coming into lectures wearing his GB rowing kit because he'd been on the Thames training for about 4 hours pre-lecture. Uh,
Wow.
and then, of course, that wonderful scene that many of us will never forget of him and Johnny um,
Mm.
winning the gold at the '92 Olympics. And then very impressively, he competed again at London 2012.
He did, yes. I was going to
Yeah,
say 2012.
and I was out with him last week, and yeah, he's just a very charming, humble, impressive character.
Sounds incredible. You have to introduce him to me. I can get him on the show. Why not? I mean, He's got some fantastic stories, hasn't he?
He
Wonderful
has,
stories.
and in fact, we were due to be on a podcast last week called "The Atlantic and the Olympic Rowers,"
Wow.
and that's been postponed. But yeah, he's a fantastic public speaker and an
Yes.
excellent coach, and yeah, a funny, humble, charming guy. I'm sure he's got some flaws, but I'm yet to see them.
Yeah, we've all got flaws. We've all got, skeletons in the closet, haven't we? So that we hide them away. We know they're there. We've
Yeah,
learnt from them. We don't want them to be come out into the open, but sometimes they do, embarrassingly or whatever. But we all have them. We're all human beings. We're individuals, and none of us are perfect. Let's be honest.
yes. I think possibly I'm rather too open about my flaws, but that's me.
Oh, I don't think that's a problem. I think
You know,
that's quite a nice thing to be, really. It shows you're a
yeah,
genuine individual and happy to share your emotions, with people in that way. I think it's
yeah,
a fantastic trait to have.
yeah, a bit of vulnerability. I think certainly in this day and age,
Mm,
um, in the new business that I run, I I really do try and champion the founders and owners that I speak to embrace being open and honest and vulnerable, with their
mm,
leadership teams because it breeds a great culture.
it
And
does.
you show your teams that you are human, which back in, dare I say it, back in my father's day, they wouldn't have dreamt of doing that.
No, it certainly wouldn't. The boss was the
Very
boss,
much,
and that
very
was it.
servant leader now, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's good to see change at that level of business now, isn't it?
It really is.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I think it used to be very much, you know, I'm your boss. You should be pleased you're working for me. Almost I've done you a
Yeah.
favor. And now it's
Yes.
very much, I'm so glad you're working for us. How can I improve your tenure? And
Mm,
very much, we're responsible for you now that you're working for us. And yeah, I do. I think that's a real step change for the better.
definitely. And that step change has happened in quite recent times as well, hasn't it?
Yeah,
The last 10 years, 12 years, maybe? I mean, before that, it's quite recent in terms of life, isn't it?
it
Um,
is. And of course, there are still some of those old school leaders,
No,
in roles,
no.
desperately hanging on, or well, who am I to judge? But
Yeah, they are still there, and you hear the stories sometimes. People complain about being bullied by their boss. Um, these people don't like you to work from home. They want you in the office 9 till 5. So they can see that you're actually working. And I mean, all those bad traits of bosses of yesteryear. And thankfully, that's probably a transition from COVID. Sort of an enforced principle of working from home, wasn't it, with COVID? That changed the climate, really. It's one good thing that came out of COVID is it changed the working climate, which I think is incredible. It's a
yeah,
good thing.
it really has. So my thoughts are not really complete on this. So I'm not sure what it's done for, the GDP of
Mm,
Britain, with people working from home, because I think much much as some people will be more productive from home, I suspect most are not working as hard as they would have done in the office. Huge sweeping statement.
mm,
Um, but certainly for many people, it's really helped them with their work-life balance. It's helped them to manage, you know, single moms or single dads, or it's helped them to be able to get a better balance, see their children more
definitely.
while holding down a job, and they're backed to do that.
And that provides a level of mental resiliency, doesn't it, as well? It provides that awareness back. And I think that's a powerful thing because I know that I've worked from home for many, many years. And, I can go back to the days when I was traveling into London every day, 2.5 hours there, 2.5 hours back. It's a 5 hour shift just on traveling each and every day. I mean, that's just mad. So if you're working from home, actually you end up doing a little bit more work than normally because you can put in an extra hour or two because you're gaining 5 back.
Yeah.
So it
And
does work.
then when you were doing that, I'll question you now for a bit.
Yeah, of
When,
course. Why not?
when you were
Yeah.
doing those 5 hours, was that, dare I say it, before smartphones or not?
No, smartphones were still around at the time. So this is pre-COVID. So I always had smartphones and
So you
so on
could
for
work.
many, many years. Yes.
Yeah,
But there was always dare I say it, where you're doing work for organizations, they want to see you in the office.
yeah,
Because to them, if they can't see you in the office, you're not working.
yeah,
That's that old managerial style of yesteryear, which is thankfully disappearing now.
yeah.
Um, and I think most people do say, actually we're generating more now as businesses with people working from home. And the other good thing, of course, is that companies can get rid of that property. They don't need that office or downsize because you work out the cost of floor space.
Yeah.
It's enormous to run an office and with all the electric bills and utility bills and so on and so forth. So it's actually quite profitable for companies now to have their workers working from home and downsizing on properties, businesses, yes, business space, and and getting out those big buildings that they used to all work within,
So
costing billions each year.
the flip side of that, which I see all the time, uh,
Mm,
I mean, it helps me run my business, but it's not great. I wish for them they didn't have to face this, but it's meant that people are working alone at home. And so much as the company may have saved money on the premises, it's then left many people working at home alone and isolated. And that may have felt great for a few months, but the novelty soon wore off. And, we've seen that people have struggled, not connecting with other humans. That's why lockdown was so tough. We are tribal.
yes,
We're meant to be around other people, and you get the odd introvert
yes.
who has loved working at home and wouldn't have it any other way. But for a lot of people, working from home is really, really tough.
I understand that argument there as well, and but what I used to sort of counteract with that sometimes is, well, look, you got Zoom, you got Teams, you can have meetings over as we're doing here. You pick up your mobile phone, phone your work colleague you're not spoken to, have a conversation.
Yeah,
It's kind of no different than standing around a coffee machine in the office, isn't it? Really, those old coffee machine meetings were quite productive. I do remember those. Um, but just pick the phone up. I mean, I think since COVID, people have learned the ability or lost the ability to communicate, really. And it seems to be a lot of that now going around, a lack of communication between people because they just don't know how to. The youngsters in particular, and I'm not picking on the youth of our times in particular, but they do have a serious lack of ability to communicate. So picking up that phone and generating a web call with some colleagues to have a discussion,
yeah,
that's still there, isn't it? You can do that.
yeah. So again, at this networking lunch earlier, we were talking
Mm,
about this very issue, and that with AI, and AI will just get more and more clever.
I will.
We'll soon barely be able to tell the difference between a human interaction and an AI interaction. But
Mm,
I think we're going to be forced to start phoning people again, uh,
absolutely.
because they're going to need to speak to a human, and they'll know whether it's you or whether it's a computer.
Oh, it's
Uh,
so obvious that the interactions that because no matter what a computer can generate in AI, you lose that humanity. You can't give a robot
yeah.
humanity, feelings, emotions, can you? It's impossible. So
Well, I I love to agree with you. I'm sure somebody is working on it. They can obviously read your body temperature and watch whether your eyes are dilated. So I
yeah, but you
wonder at
can't.
the point whether they're going to have, computers in meeting rooms, virtually scanning your body temperature, whether you're sweating, what your pupils are doing, and um, but yeah,
But I
I
would do that anyway. If I was in a meeting room, a presentation, I would scan the audience to see if their eyes are dilated naturally, body language, read them, see whether, what's going on. I would naturally do the body language check anyway as a person to the people I was reacting with or interacting with. So that's probably not a thing. What you can't
that's
do, I
the
don't
point.
think,
My
Tim.
point is that the
Yeah.
computer, the com so I'm very much thinking. So I was a broker in the city for 20 odd years,
Mm,
and a lot of my colleagues who are still doing it, their business has been eroded by the use of screens.
yes,
But clients still like speaking to a human.
they do.
And when they can press a button and buy or sell something, they still choose sometimes to ring a voice broker and
Yes.
have a chat and just say who's doing what and how are you, and okay, I'll buy that. So look, we're here to stay. We'll fight AI till our dying breath.
We will, yeah. But I think whether you're a believer in God or an extra life form somewhere,
Yeah,
you can't give a robot a soul, can you?
no,
And that's the thing I'm talking about, really. We all have we're all individuals. We all have our own souls. Where our makeup is different, and you can't do that with a robotic AI concept. It's just not. It's just not real.
no,
Not possible. So
no, no, no.
interesting conversation, though, isn't it? Really,
Yeah, God. And
called
it's
progression.
just started.
Apparently,
Really, we're only seeing the beginning of the AI revolution, but
we are.
yeah, we'll see.
It's right at the beginning, and it will take hold, and it's going to be quite an amazing journey, I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So, booking you as a speaker, Tim, will not only motivate you as an individual or your team, but also provide practical strategies for navigating life's toughest challenges, because you've been through them anyway. So you can apply this, ensuring the client or the client's organization thrives in the face of adversity. I mean, it's incredible. I'm selling your services here, Tim. So, how do people get in touch with and book your services?
Tim at timharrisconsulting.com is
Hmm?
my, I mean, that's my email, and Tim at Tim Harris Consulting is one of my websites. That's probably the easiest way. Yeah, that's it.
Sounds like a great thing. And to get people to, who are watching this show, that's how to contact you. It's fantastic. And by all means, use this show as part of your promotional part as well, Tim, because I think the show's quite a good show actually we're making here. So you're quite welcome to do that.
Well,
So
it's a great
what is your,
and
yeah.
I love listening to your one with Ashley Giles as well. So yeah.
Oh, that was a great show, wasn't it, Ashley? That was fantastic. But also listen to Jane Baylor. I mean, that was just sensational. I mean, really, what a wonderful show. Well, they're all good because they're all individuals that have a unique story to tell. So it's just pulling that out of people, isn't it? Really, my guests,
Yeah.
which is a great thing. So, what is your next life challenge? Is there something else on the horizon?
So physically, in terms of challenges, hoping my wife doesn't listen to this, but
I'm sure she will.
it's um, it's kind of in the back of my mind whether to whether to undertake the Atlantic solo.
Mm,
And my thought process there is not wanting to let Simon down
mm,
was an enormous motivating factor. So every time I thought I don't want to do this shift,
yes.
I was kind of forced to do that shift because I didn't want to let Simon down. Myself as well, but it's very much you don't want to have to face the person that you're letting down.
Yes.
I just wonder whether I would be able to have the discipline not to let myself down if I did it on my own.
That's a tough call, isn't it? A tough call because you
Yeah,
literally be isolated for a large amount of time. A bit like being on a desert island. The madness creeps in. You start talking to yourself, maybe answering yourself is a strong possibility too.
I'll
I
definitely
mean, you just
talk to myself. Yeah,
there's endless mental possibilities there of going through the strength factors of mental health.
yeah, but
That will
again,
certainly prove how strong you are.
yeah, again, it's this push yourself.
Mm.
You know, what's the stretch and what's foolish. Um,
This is your soul now pulling on you, isn't it? And you're telling your brain to to
the,
stop being quite so
the
out of the
only
box thinking.
The only other thing I'd like to do really is I've got terrible arthritis in my right ankle. Otherwise, I would have
Mm.
liked to undertake the Marathon des Sables.
Mm.
Quite a lot of people have done World's Toughest Row and Marathon des Sables as a kind of, I've done these two. Um, but yeah, my ankle won't take that. I'd like to climb Mount Kilimanjaro.
Mm. So that's a nice one.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's less of a stretch. But again, many people have not been able to do that, and they've been
Exactly.
supremely fit because you never know when altitude sickness will affect you.
Exactly. And altitude sickness is very real. It's very, very real.
Yeah, yeah,
The lack of oxygen you get at altitude is quite incredible.
yeah. Well, again, a bit like the sleep deprivation on the row,
Mm. Oh,
it
indeed.
it leaves you almost drunk.
It does.
I did. My wife and I walked the Inca Trail back in 2008, and she got altitude sickness on the way up, and she made it over the col at I think 4,200 meters, and then just snapped out of it
Yeah.
as we went down the other side.
Mm.
Almost like you'd put smelling salts under her nose. Um, but yeah, it can hit anyone, no matter how fit you are.
Yeah, it certainly can. I mean, when I was living in Mexico City, that's just under 3,000 meters above sea level. It's quite a high city, Mexico City. And
Yeah,
I'd regularly go and run around Mexico City and do 10Ks quite regularly.
right.
And the breathing was difficult because of the lack of oxygen. And not just because of the air was dirty with fumes of cars and everything else. It was
Sure.
generally a lack of oxygen because it's so high up the city.
Yeah.
So it's an awareness, isn't it? The altitude levels and lack of oxygen.
Well, I
Very
remember
difficult.
landing. We flew to La Paz in Bolivia,
Mm,
and I believe that's the highest airport in the world,
wow.
maybe,
Mm,
possibly. But I remember being incredibly short of breath in La Paz.
Yeah. I was in the Masai Mara actually. I was out there in 2018 with
Okay.
the Masai people, and that's extremely
As
a
you
high
do.
level. Yeah, as you do. It's one of
Yeah.
those little trips you just go off and do.
Yeah.
Being with the Masai, wonderful
Yeah.
trip. And of course, I remember walking around the Masai and feeling I had to really struggle with breathing because of the height above sea level,
Yeah.
and that's an incredible thing. But these
Yeah.
are the trips we do. These are the journeys we do in life, Tim. It's all good
Yeah.
fun, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I've always been a kinesthetic learner. I learn
Mm.
from doing, and yeah, that's how I am. So, but though, yeah, they're the only two things I'm thinking of. But for now, I think just stay on terra firma,
Yep.
and
Do what you're doing.
get the kids through
Carry
school.
on.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
keep
You
keep
got
keep evolving, keep becoming
yes.
a better person if possible.
Absolutely right.
Obviously, it's possible. Um,
Yeah, and you are you've strived with that with becoming a better person, as we all do.
yeah,
Well, we all should do. Not everybody does, do they? But we all should do through learning, through our mistakes in life, journeying what we do in life, learning, becoming better people. I
yeah,
think that's the real thing, isn't it? It's a real success
yeah,
to do that.
yeah.
You know.
And the coaching has now evolved from sort of one-on-one coaching with CEOs and COOs,
Yes.
C-suite professionals to I'm now a professional EOS implementer. EOS
Mm,
stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating Software. And,
nice.
and one of the things I went on a workshop, and as happens on these sort of retreats, they go round the group and they say, tell me a bit about yourself. And I gave them a brief synopsis of my story, and said that I wasn't finding coaching particularly impactful. And for my
Yes.
second career, I was hoping to have more impact. And one of the chaps on the retreat took me aside at lunchtime and said, um, I am an EOS implementer, and impact is at the top of my list.
Mm,
And what we do is we work with the leadership teams of small businesses. So
yes.
never corporate, well, not never corporate, but um, very much entrepreneurs.
Mm,
And he said we really feel that by going into these businesses who are often struggling or hitting the ceiling, frustrated, not growing enough, nothing's working,
yeah.
um, that through implementing this proven process of EOS, they get to see these teams' business lives improve, and then on the
Mm,
back of that, their home lives improve. And so by going into a team of 20, and setting them on the right path and getting their business working well, um, allowing them to take back their personal lives, they
yes.
felt they were impacting 400 people,
Mm,
because you took into account the families of all these employees. And I,
absolutely.
I
Yes.
love
Yeah.
that. I love that story, and so that's what I now do. And it's incredibly gratifying, and you meet some fascinating people who, you know we all know that
Mm,
entrepreneurs are kind of the backbone of our economy. um,
exactly.
and it's tough out there, and 50% of them fail. um, and what we discovered is really 50% of them fail through not instilling discipline and accountability.
Mm,
So they can all have, visions and business plans, and
mm,
think they know how to solve problems and stick a few processes in. But very simply, if you don't have discipline and accountability, you fail.
yes, I agree with you. I
But
completely agree with
fast,
you.
some fascinating businesses out there, and some brave people trying to get them off the ground, and not wanting to
Absolutely.
join corporate life.
Mm. And that's the good approach, as on business entrepreneurs, as we both are. That's
Yeah,
how we live our lives, don't we? And do you know what? It's now 6:45, and we've been on. this show for over an hour and 15 minutes.
God,
Where
right.
does time go? I mean, it's great when
I
you're enjoying yourself.
for hours with you, but we'll probably chat afterwards. But
Yeah, we will. Yeah,
very,
let's have a chat afterwards.
yeah,
I
very
think I
enjoy.
should wrap up now, and we'll stay on and we'll have a chat afterwards, Tim,
Yeah,
because there's
well,
more we can talk about.
lovely talking to you, and thanks again.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. It really has. And as always, this is the same old story for me. As always, on the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show, we could talk forever, Tim, and we can, and we'll have a chat afterwards. Absolutely. And we could, of course, and an incredible life story about your life and the challenges you've had and overcome. More so, how you've harnessed these challenges to build a successful coaching business whereby you help others. I mean, it's truly incredible. It's been a huge pleasure as always, and as always, the pleasure is all mine. And of course, the show's audience when this podcast is released on the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show and the Lord Russell Baker YouTube channel. Thanks, Tim. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you Tim Harris a big round of applause here. Look, as you see me clapping my hands, it's been a fabulous show, it really has. We'll
What?
talk shortly. Been brilliant. The next episode on the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show is Merlin, the story of Gordon Hill, Manchester United and England. Wow. Where my special guest will be Gordon Hill, who is a former professional footballer who played in the English Football League for Millwall, Manchester United, Derby County and Queen's Park Rangers. Gordon Hill was capped 6 times for the England national team as well, plus an FA Cup winner for Manchester United in 1977, beating Liverpool 2-1 to lift the grand old trophy at Wembley Stadium. So another great show to look forward to for all football and sports fans alike. And of course, exclusive on the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show. And of course, I'm looking forward to seeing you all on the inside. So until then, it's au revoir from him and au revoir from me.